Welcome back to Second Breakfast. I am so excited we're finally doing this episode. I have been tinkering with these notes for a month.
Yeah, and this is this is coming out like a month from now when we're recording this.
Yes.
So we decided, so back up. So we watched this thing.
Miniseries?
Yeah, I mean, the title's in the title. Whatever.
The Idol.
We watched The Idol when it aired, so months ago, right? And we've been thinking about it, didn't quite know what to say, but then this has been stewing in Cam's little brain, and then he finally put together some notes, and so we're recording this now. It'll be out in a few weeks because we've got a couple other things that are a bit more timely. But if you haven't seen The Idol, big spoilers for The Idol.
Yeah.
But the TLDR is this was fantastic and you should watch it. Ignore
Idol,
what the internet is saying.
Yes.
There's so much weird discourse. I think there's just a lot of this show is so strange, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand it.
It's challenging.
And I don't mean that we're so cerebral and smart that we got it. It's just you just have to give it a chance.
Right.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
It's unlike anything you've ever seen. So if you haven't watched it, turn this off, go watch it. Come back. We'll see you in 6 hours.
So this is about HBO's The Idol, which is a 5-episode miniseries from Sam Levinson, who was...
it's only 5. I thought it was 6.
No, it's 5.
Sorry, 5 hours, not 6, but whatever.
So he's the big mind behind Euphoria. And I thought this was astonishing. This, I think, and this is sort of the point we're going to build to throughout the episode, that The Idol is a vastly misunderstood masterpiece.
Definitely. Let me also say, these ideas were very much out of Cam's brain. I watched this and enjoyed it, but these things were prepared by Cam, these ideas. So I'm just sort of coming in and reacting to his ideas.
Color commentary.
Just so I feel like sometimes there's a confusion about why sometimes our episodes are so imbalanced. All the ideas are coming from you. I'm just going, yeah. It's because that's just how this episode was prepared. Cam has a lot to say about it. I'm just here to react.
Different works of art speak to us in different ways.
Now, sometimes we do it differently. For example, I talked about Hana Yanagihara's A Little Life on one of our bonus episodes, which you can find on Patreon. That was very much a me-centered episode. So there's balance in this show.
And we very much want to know how this show spoke to you guys, whether it's down in the YouTube comments or the comments over on our Patreon, where you can get bonus episodes every month and the whole back catalog of bonus episodes we've done over the last year.
And
plus.
you can comment on our just regular episodes like this one directly in Patreon. If you I don't know if you are against YouTube, you can do it on Patreon.
So this is The Idol. And I want to kind of set the stage here. The Idol sits right alongside most of my favorite works of all time because it's right there on the shelf of works of art about artists striving for artistic perfection. So in this pantheon, we have Amadeus, Black Swan, which we covered a few weeks ago.
We did.
Whiplash, Birdman, Dead Poet Society. And
Emily, remember we saw that a few months ago?
Yes.
We did an episode on that as well.
And this one hits it from a slightly different angle, which I think keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
It means that it's adding something new to that lexicon. The Idol follows a megastar in freefall. After huge success as a pop star, but while she's reaching for more and a career reinvention and evolution.
And going through this deeply personal issue of losing her mother.
Right. This is not just a story of creation and malaise, kind of the afterburn that follows it, but it's about artistic reinvention, which honestly, as a writer and voice actor and comic artist and all the other things I do, that's most of the work.
Yeah.
The reinvention part, that kind of lighting the fire again, that's the tough part. That is the most bottomless and impossible part of this life. But I want to throw it to you here a little bit because this idea of artistic reinvention, sort of at the midpoint of a career. You've been teaching me a lot about Taylor Swift the last couple months.
I sure have.
And after we listened to, and you gave me sort of the context for Taylor Swift's Reputation album, I think the setting where we find Jocelyn in The Idol at the very start here, I think she's caught in a similar moment. Meaning what should be a really precarious and private moment in an artist's life is exploded by the wild, highest excesses of capitalism and consumerism and celebrity.
Yes.
And guiding us through this really writhing, explosive, chaotic moment is Sam Levinson, who, not despite, but because of his own stylistic excess, I think he becomes the perfect Virgil to lead us through this hellish landscape.
Sure, and he's also coming off the success of Euphoria. I mean, the show is not over, but it's kind of been on pause for a while just because of various factors. And so that's been wildly successful. So I'm sure he felt this weird pressure to, like, when he's making something new, for it to be new and fresh and reinvented and just as good or better. And that's difficult and scary.
Yes,
so I think it works really well.
And the reaction it got was so much more divided than the reaction Euphoria got.
Yeah, I feel like Euphoria was like universally liked. I mean, I'm sure there are people who didn't like it, but overall it was like you look up Euphoria review and it's like outstandingly positive.
And Zendaya winning Emmys.
Right.
It doing so well viewership-wise and social media chatter.
And it appealing to, I think, a wider audience than this one does.
But I would argue that his grainy aesthetic, that oversaturated, almost burnt look, everything being shot on film, this intricate, beautiful blocking of every scene and shot, the really strong shadow work that he really leaned into in season 2 of Euphoria. I think he wanted it to feel like everything in season 2, I'm vaguely remembering this, was kind of shot after midnight, where you have that kind of burn and late night feel to it. But he also, and maybe this is his greatest attribute, he wrings shockingly raw and vulnerable performances out of his leads.
Definitely. And in both of these shows,
Yeah, and that was our greatest compliment to Zendaya when we were watching it, especially what they did in season 2.
Oh my gosh, she's so good. She's so good.
But I think what Lily Rose Depp does here in The Idol is just as impressive.
Yeah, right.
And The Idol, compared to something like Euphoria, which is more mainstream, more accepted, more traditional, The Idol is a messier, wilder, and I think more true work of art than Euphoria. At least that's how it struck me.
Yeah,
And of course that means that it's more uneven and inconsistent than something like Euphoria. It's much more of a singular vision from a creator, but it shoots higher. I think it shoots higher than Euphoria did, and you can feel that sense of striving all the way through. The Idol is reaching for something titanic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always hit it, but when it does, it shoots way past Euphoria.
And it's just, it has a much faster momentum than Euphoria. I mean, there are moments of Euphoria that feel like rushed and confusing and crazy and like everything's just going, but not nearly as much as in this show. Like from the get-go, this show just moves fast. You got 1,000 people trying to talk over each other, people trying to solve all these problems and put out these fires like in real time, like on top of each other as more things are happening, because it's so connected to the internet and what's happening because she's this public figure. And so a huge chunk of this is not just about her own personal problems and her trying to deal with, you know, being a creator, being an artist, but how all of that, you know, is perceived by, you know, billions of people and control.
She has so many managers and PR people. That's the entire supporting cast is all of these handlers for her.
Like, and I don't want this episode just to be us comparing to Euphoria, but we're talking about it right now. Like Rue struggles. Who hasn't seen Euphoria? Zendaya's character is a drug addict, right? And so much of what's happening is her struggling with her addiction and dealing with these internal personal problems and seeing how that sort of permeates out into her friends and family. But, you know, that affects max 15 people, right? Whereas this is like so much more explosive, and any single thing that Jocelyn does, it has an impact on millions, billions of people, and it's moving so quickly and it's so intense.
I sort of nodded to it before. Is there anything else you want to say about the Taylor Swift comparison I made? Do you think it's accurate?
No, I think it is. I mean, it's different, right? But I think, and like the public element of it, so much of, I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, but there are Swifties out there who know way more than I do.
But you are a Swiftie.
Yes, I feel confident saying that. But
as someone who rides in the car with you, you are a Swiftie.
I'm also just like, I haven't listened to this much Taylor Swift in a long time, but it's because of everything going on. But the point is, like, the public nature of it, like Taylor Swift coming back with Reputation was after a big public fallout, a big public sort of attack on her, as many would view it, and her like erasing all of her social medias and like being silent for a year and not being publicly out, and then coming back with this album sort of rebranded, refreshed, reinvented. I mean, it's literally like a line in her first single from Reputation, "Look What You Made Me Do," and it's her trying to find inspiration in these different areas and explore these different avenues and sort of reinvent herself as an artist, with it she has done with every new album. But like this was like Reputation was, I think, the biggest shift in her like musical identity. I mean, the jump from Red to 1989 is pretty big too. Like 1989 was her first like purely pop album, but it has like, you can see its roots in Red. Reputation is so different from 1989, like aesthetically, musically, lyrically, in terms of mood and ideas and like theses that are put forward. So that big reinvention piece, that public reinvention is so present. So I like that a lot.
It's also a lot more adult. Reputation compared to the previous albums.
Yes, and it was really divisive. A lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like it that much when it came out. I love it now. But when it came out, I didn't like 1989 much either when it came out, because I grew up with Taylor Swift when I was in high school, which was like during like Fearless Speak Now. Okay, so like that's what I was used to. And so I was like, I don't like this direction at all for her. This is weird. And so many people felt the same way, which is how people feel about The Idol, like the show, but also how people in the show, in the story of The Idol, I think are reacting to her new direction in her music. So.
Because Jocelyn's reinvention here is similarly adult and sexual and grown up. And that maturity, it's funny because that's also what became the anchor of the discourse around this show. And what was most divisive was the sexuality. So I want to talk about that for a minute.
Actually, really quick, just to bring it to Taylor Swift, like in The Idol, there's a big concern about, well, you can't do this because you're this role model for young girls. Like, you can't have this really really like overtly sexual picture be your album cover, because like, what does that say to young girls? And similarly, Taylor Swift is so often held as this like, well, you're supposed to be a model for young girls, so you can't have like this overly sexual album. You can't like have this album about like how you're kind of a bad person and you don't always like yourself and you do what you want and take what you want. Like, that's not a great message to send to young girls. And she was just kind of like, I don't care.
I didn't sign up to be a role model.
Right. And that's what Jocelyn's doing.
I'm an artist.
So
right.
Exactly. So the similarities there are strong.
And I maybe speaking for both of us, just because we had these conversations during the run of the show, we found the reaction to the sexuality of The Idol in the American media and especially social media absolutely absurd, if not completely disingenuous.
Like, what's happening in America? Are we okay?
Almost any comparison you make here is hysterical. Never mind the ridiculously tame 50 Shades of Grey movies, which we saw and were very funny. They're the best comedies of the years they came out.
We've talked about that on this show before. I love those
They're
movies.
Great.
They're absurd.
But they are not risque even.
No, they're having the most vanilla sex I've ever seen.
The way it's
in
shot.
Anything.
What's
and
shown.
Like, how is this not PG-13? I don't understand it. Like, and they have this reputation of being so like
hardcore,
dangerous, hardcore. I'm like, have you seen a movie? Have you read a book? Because this is like
also like 6 of the 10 most popular websites in America are just porn.
Right.
And so 50 Shades comes out and it's a smashing box office success. Breaks all sorts of records.
Now, I will say the books are a lot more intense than the movies. But so like, I think that was the expectation. But
so the movies do that well. And they're not something anyone can talk about in the harsh light of day, but everyone goes to see it.
Yeah.
And they're incredibly tame.
Yeah.
But even if you look at it more globally than just sort of American movies in the last couple of years, Versailles, which we loved, came out like 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it's a show about Louis XIV building the Palace of Versailles.
Yes, it's a French...
like 17th century France.
It's a French production shot in English. So it's very much suited for a global audience. But it has that French sensibility.
Yeah.
So Versailles, with that being a European production, it's a work of art made for adults. It doesn't have that petrified American sensation.
Yeah.
It's an unflinchingly bold historical portrait of sex and power within this court of Louis.
Right.
And it goes 10 times further than The Idol does. But the thing that I think we most marveled at during the run of this show was the contradiction in the American media subconscious.
Yeah.
Simultaneous total sex positivity and a hair trigger instinct for pearl-clutching Puritanism.
Yes,
like,
yes.
We talked about this months ago now in our episode about Van Helsing. The terrified, sexless American phenomenon.
I was not on that episode. That was you and Tristan.
You were a little bit. You had a little cameo.
I introed, but that was
also,
your and Tristan's episode.
It was your fault because you fell asleep during the movie.
It's your fault for starting a movie at 11 p.m. on a Friday. What was I supposed to do?
But we talked about that sensation, that sort of phenomenon within the context of Van Helsing, which rebelled against that in a really satisfying way. But fortunately, The Idol is just a real work of art.
Right.
It ignores all of that pearl clutching and hesitation, which is the death of art. It ignores all of that and engages with themes of sexuality and pleasure and maturity. Again, in ways that look mild, like totally tame and redundant compared to something like Hellraiser in 1987,
Sure.
which we also did an episode on. This is like 40 years later. And the sexuality, as it's presented here, is so stylized. It's so over the top. It's nothing. It's not pornographic or simple or cheap. It is fantastical and surreal. It's seductive and dangerous.
And it works so well for the world that this is taking place in.
Exactly. It serves the story constantly.
Yes.
It's the slide from something being seductive, like all pop stars are.
Yeah.
It goes from being seductive, surreal, and then dangerous.
Right.
And it's that slide into danger, which is the central theme of the show. Because Jocelyn, the main character, Lily Rose Depp here, she wants to keep her entire world teetering on that edge of danger. That seems to be where she finds inspiration.
Yes.
And we see the way she puppeteers everyone in her life. She wants to create, control, challenge, test everything and everyone around her. And in all that tinkering, that prodding and application of pressure, making people squirm, we see the way she treats her friends, her team, even her fans online. The rest of the world is this little ant farm.
Yeah.
And if you compare that to someone like Taylor Swift, who has 99% of the streams on every streaming service, who has an ungodly amount of money and power in the culture,
and a deeply dedicated fan base,
the rest of the world would look like an ant farm that operates at her whim. So when that's all a character has, locked into this world of extreme wealth and celebrity and power, locked within this rigid and ruthless music business, when you get to explore the sexuality of a character like that, it's going to be fascinating.
Right.
What are you left with? When you plug in those variables, what comes out the other side?
Right.
And I think that's the really telling stuff in this show. The character work that is done within the sexuality. Every gesture, every impulse. The sex scenes in The Idol become the most truly revealing. They almost feel operatic because they are performance. They're furthering the character. It's performance without words. It's constant decision making, desires, intimacy,
power plays.
It's almost the only private or vulnerable or intimate moments you get for someone who has to be so performative,
right? And so public facing.
Exactly. Who's always on this global stage with anything she does.
Yeah, and you see it as like when she starts to sort of like as the show goes on, like about halfway through, when she starts to be like overtly sexual in front of her team and the people she's working with, like that's an indication that she is opening up and becoming more vulnerable to the people around her to create better things and be a better artist. Like it's all like steeped in symbolism and it's all serving a purpose. It's not just there to be there, the way that so many people seem to criticize any form of sex on film.
It's such a patronizing misunderstanding of art. And artistic intent and the decision making, the millions of choices that go into every completed work of art. Sex is an integral part of the storytelling in this show.
And you get that in the first scene of the pilot.
Of course you
with
do.
The intimacy coordinator. That's like one of my favorite things about, like, it's like a thesis statement for the show, because if you don't remember, she's doing this photo shoot and it's like it's a pretty overtly sexual photo shoot, right? And there's an intimacy coordinator there who's concerned about her nipple showing. And like they say over and over, like, no, Jocelyn's okay with it. She like wants it there. She thinks it's part of the thing, whatever. And the intimacy coordinator's like, well, there's a concern about blah, blah, blah. So they just lock him in the closet and pay him like thousands of dollars.
And again, the overbearing condescension of a man hand-wringing about a woman who's telling you what she wants.
Like, when she's there being like, no, that is what I, the artist, the subject of this photo shoot, want to do. And this man is just sitting there like expressing concern on her behalf to her. It doesn't make any sense. And like, that's what I feel like a lot of the audience reaction has been to this show, instead of just like asking the people in charge like what they wanted to do with it.
But also, you don't even have to read that scene at face value. Not everything that is, like we saw that phrase the other day, something being represented in a work of art is not the artist's explicit endorsement of that thing.
Right.
So you can read that as just an opening salvo of, we're going to play with all these ideas.
Yeah, like this stuff is complicated. This is a real thing we're dealing with, like in the media, with artists right now. How is it confronted? How is it dealt with?
I want to talk about the cast for a second here. We have a scene-stealing ensemble here. Whether it's Eli Roth, who is the reason I wanted to watch this show in the first place, because we love Eli Roth here at Second Breakfast.
He directed not Cabin in the Woods,
Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever.
Hostel.
Thank you. Hostel. And
the upcoming Thanksgiving movie.
Green Inferno. And he like hosts this big history of horror show and podcast on FX, I think. Anyway, he's a really cool guy.
One of the best parts of Inglourious Bastards. Disciple of Quentin Tarantino. We love Eli Roth.
I love when he's acting. He doesn't act very much, but I love when he does.
He also directed Knock Knock with Keanu Reeves, which is a really fun date night movie.
Love it.
So yes, we love Eli Roth. He's fantastic here. Also Troye Sivan, who's a Maggie favorite.
If you don't know, Troye Sivan was like started out as a YouTuber, is now this like amazing musical artist.
He's very good.
He's an amazing singer. Yeah, he's been very important to me as I've grown up. I love him a
Rachel
lot.
Sennott, who's sort of the new indie darling. She's fantastic here as
She's
sort
great.
of the assistant/best friend.
She plays that character so well. I feel like I've met that person, and I in many ways am that person. And I really liked her performance. It was really, she was like so. I just appreciated her willingness to be that vulnerable and awkward and like. And just weird next to this like gorgeous, like full of confidence pop star. It was great.
All of the handlers, the managers, the producers, everyone's good on this show. But we have to sort of take a second for the actor at the center of this story who carries the whole thing on her back. Lily Rose Depp here.
She's so good.
This is a fearless, complete powerhouse performance. The range of expression that she goes through every 10 minutes, the turmoil, the exhaustive, it looks exhausting, the emotional depth she reaches for. I thought she was dazzling in every episode here.
Yeah,
she's
too.
so good.
Yeah.
And she's going to be one of the leads in the next Robert Eggers movie, the Nosferatu remake.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that.
We love Robert Eggers from The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman. He's our favorite guy. He's our dude. He's our big director in the sky. So we're very excited to see her working with him. But I want to take a moment now to talk about the most divisive and the most misunderstood part of this show. And it's The Weeknd's performance as Tedros.
Yeah, because it's like, even if you didn't like The Idol, I feel like you can look at Lily Rose Depp's performance and say like, yeah, she was really, really good.
She's working hard.
Like she's doing a good job. The Weeknd has been incredibly divisive. His performance was incredibly divisive.
He is the secret ingredient. He is the reason this show is so good. And this is why we waited to talk about this show. Because I found the discourse about this character in particular so agonizing to sit through.
So
and I didn't want to just be pissed. I wanted a little distance and perspective.
Yeah.
There were so many dumbass comments through the 5 weeks this show was on about how The Weeknd, quote, can't act. And I thought these were fascinating because they seemed to cleanly and entirely miss the point. For example, maybe this is a problem of media literacy, but the point...
I mean, that is definitely a problem.
Definitely. The point of Tedros, as I saw it, is that he is an ambitious, greedy blowhard with eyes way bigger than his stomach. For example, he's good in the production booth, pushing and guiding his artists, but he goes way too far, and he's bad, very bad, at almost everything else in life. Putting it more plainly, Tedros is acting most of the time. And badly. Not The Weeknd, but the character Tedros is a bad actor.
Yes.
And he's constantly trying to perform, trying to pretend, and
trying to take on this persona.
To be the most dominant force in an aspirational, surreal celebrity world.
Yeah.
He's trying to be the biggest, almost pro wrestling character in the room there.
Yeah.
For example, the scene in the boutique store where he tries to out-macho the shop attendant, which is the thing that became one of the first memes of how terrible the show was.
Yeah.
Every comment I saw about this scene called it cringe, but they were calling The Weeknd cringe.
Right, and not Tedros. I know, that's such a, again, I think that's a like...
That's the media literacy.
Yes,
critique.
like that same like confusion about representation equaling endorsement. Like it's like they just it's reading it on face value and not understanding that no, maybe not everyone in the show is perfect. Like everyone on this show is flawed, and that's the point. Like he's trying to do this thing and not doing well, and that's the point. Ugh, it's so frustrating.
It reminded me of this anecdote from my mom like 10 years ago when she got on social media. And we used to watch soap operas together.
Yeah.
One time we watched 47 episodes of Young and the Restless in one weekend. The trick is you fast forward through the storylines you don't care about and you can really bust through them.
I really love that visual, you guys just sitting there.
It's so much fun. But she followed a lot of the stars for, just to see behind the scenes and stuff from the soap operas. And to see, she would read me the comments of people commenting on the social media posts of soap opera actors, talking to them as if they are their characters, and like sending them death threats and telling them how disappointed they were that the character cheated on their wife or whatever.
So this has been a problem for a long time.
This has been a problem forever. And when you take someone like The Weeknd, who is a major star in the music world, and I think that becomes just a general sort of cultural celebrity. If you do that well in music, you just become like a figure across the culture. I feel like he's almost transcended music, especially doing a project like this.
Yeah.
But I think this is what kind of broke people's brains here. He's doing something unthinkable in today's pop culture landscape. He's making himself look like a dope.
Yeah.
A loser. A flailing, nervous, insecure mess. In short, he's playing a character.
Wow.
He's
Imagine
acting.
that.
He's being an actor. He's not just being a cool, suave superhero.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just compare that, and we've talked about this anecdote before. Compare that to the lack of artistic integrity of the choice of like Vin Diesel or The Rock, who have it in their contracts that they can never lose a fight.
Right.
Compare that to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like people are they're seeing this person on screen trying to be cool and it not working, and they're thinking that's a fault in the actor and not the way that the character is written. It's so I understand kind of missing that, but it's like you just have to see like one of the first scenes he's in when he first shows up to Jocelyn's house. He goes into the bathroom or he looks in a mirror and he keeps practicing different ways he's going to say hello, Angel. You're like, duh, this guy's a loser. Like, that's not The Weeknd practicing his lines beforehand. That's the character Tedros practicing.
And the discord is, maybe the dissonance is fascinating, because the crude way to explain this show is imagine Euphoria, but you put David Brent from the UK Office in there. That's kind of what his character is. Like, he is more capable in certain ways, which we'll get to. But there are moments of, like, heart palpitation cringe like you get from Ricky Gervais in the UK Office.
Of course, because but again, I don't think anyone watched that and thought, wow, this guy, oh my God. Ricky Gervais can't act. Like, no one thought that.
Actually, that was one of the first mockumentary sitcoms.
Oh, that's
with
true.
The testimonials. So
that's
at the time,
so it was kind of confusing.
It was such a tiny BBC production at the time that there were people who thought it was a real documentary.
Okay, yeah. Well, then never mind.
So people have always been dumb.
People have always been dumb.
Like a documentary could ever be that funny.
That well edited.
By comparison to that suave coolness that all celebrities shoot for. Having someone who you know as one of those celebrities take on a role like this, a remarkably daring, human, honest role, you there's this like instant nerve rejection of what he's trying to do here.
Maybe people got confused because The Weeknd is a musician, and maybe they just thought that he was just pretending to be The Weeknd but with a different name. Maybe people were just confused. I don't know.
But the range of what he does in this show, because you see him flailing to do the macho thing at the boutique shop.
Ugh, it's so embarrassing for him.
The other side of that coin is the dinner table scene in Jocelyn's backyard.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you saw him flail over there before, but here there's this brutal power grab. An exploitation of everyone at the table's personal trauma that he brings up and weaponizes. He rules that table with this manipulative iron fist. He's stirring up memories of domestic abuse, throwing them at people. And he becomes this, he's this small guy with a rat tail, but he becomes this towering, tyrannical. He's more of a villain in that scene than any pumped-up Fast and the Furious action figure ever could be. He's wicked and vile in that scene.
Right.
It's an incredible turn and deepening for a villain to show what he actually is good at. Like, that scene alone is worth the price of admission.
Right.
Seeing that evolution of, oh, he's kind of bullshitting in the rest of his life, but this is why he has a death grip on this stable of artists that he runs around with.
Yeah, this company of actors, basically.
This is how he controls their entire life.
Right. But what I love most about that scene, and which I think you might be getting into in a minute, is the revelation that he did not actually have a full hold on Jocelyn, because she reveals that, or at least she says that she was lying about the domestic abuse with her mother.
Right.
So that reveals like how much of like a piece of shit weakling he actually is, because he doesn't have this hold. Like, he's like on this power trip. It's like it's like a teenager playing a video game. Like, he thinks he's like this all-powerful manipulative mastermind who can control everyone around him, and he's actually being played by Jocelyn the whole time.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to go into. It's perfect. Great. The final twist of the show is basically Jocelyn dismissing him.
Yes.
And saying that all of these revelations that she confessed to him at the early hours of the morning,
things he pulled out of her,
were all bullshit.
Yeah.
And she was using him and this weird power play thing that he does to stimulate her creative process. That he was just a pawn that she was humoring and letting him think that he was in charge. So the way I have this written out here, Jocelyn's coup d'etat, the final twist of the show, makes Tedros look even worse than he did in the David Brent cringe boutique scene.
Right.
We learn that this character is being played by a mega celebrity who everyone finds aspirational. This character is entirely impotent. And that every one of those...
no power over her.
All those villainous turns, those big power grabs and wins were allowed. That Jocelyn has always been in control, enabling and humoring him, using him to shake up and inspire her flagging creative process.
Yeah.
He was never in control for 1 second.
No.
And when he's waiting outside the stadium concert, trying to see if his guest pass will let him in, when he's brought so low at the end of this show, that she has always been this controlling force behind the scenes with the confidence to be powerful quietly. That all of his overarching diabolical manipulations were false.
Yeah.
So he is the one who is used and abused and cast aside. He becomes this toy, this pathetic toy put back on the shelf. It makes the character of Tedros a rich, demanding, and ugly role for any actor.
Yeah.
Who would have to have that sort of range to be convincing at both wild, frantic ends of that spectrum.
Right.
And The Weeknd plays it so fully.
Right.
Never mind the fact that he's the number one producer on the show, that he's guiding the music through the show.
Yeah.
And we have some of the richest, most transportive, rapturous, memorable music I've heard on TV in a long time.
It's so good.
The main theme is incredible. These spotlight performances we get from his stable of musicians throughout the show, they are astounding.
They're fantastic.
They're so good. They're memorable. There's an EP up on all the streaming service, Spotify and Apple Music. There's an EP for every episode that has all the music that's featured, and it's great. Like the bottom line,
it's all really good music. Yeah.
The bottom line I have for this show, the fantasy setting of this world, this high, elevated, impossible to reach world, I found it intoxicating.
Yeah.
The wealth, the color, the swirling drugs and desires, the typically fantastic camera work and singular artistic vision of Sam Levinson. The show was fantastic. It was indulgent, dangerous, challenging, and complete.
And delightfully stylized. I loved it in every way, right? But it still felt so honest. Like, that's what he's really good at, is like simultaneously having it be so hyper real and not like any part of reality, but it feeling so real at the same time.
And there's a possibility that they might do more, but I kind of like it the way it is, because
I do too.
At 5 episodes, which I can't remember ever seeing a miniseries at exactly 5.
Yeah, 5.
Usually
is
it's
interesting.
6,
right?
Or maybe
or
it's
8.
like 4 or 3, but I've never really seen 5.
Uh-huh.
But you know where I'm going with this. 5 episodes, 5 acts. When a show reaches dramatic heights like this, when it has such searing, traitorous role reversals and characters, it does evoke something Shakespearean in both structure and characterization. You've got this Greek chorus of her advisors throughout giving this running commentary. You've got a truly haunted, mesmerizing lead character and actor and performance. and you have this doomed, pathetic schemer off to the side. I just loved this.
Yeah.
This was a killer project.
And I think the limited setting as well, like it's almost entirely in her house. Like sometimes we're in like a studio, like a music video space, but it's almost entirely in her house. So it has this play like quality. You're
and that's the
right.
Weeknd's house.
That's right. It's his actual house, which I love. I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, I just
like
love
what an
this.
actual musician's house looks like insane, like an actual like highly successful musician.
Right.
I should say. But no, I thought this show was great. It's very weird, unlike anything you've ever seen, but I think it's really powerful and really striking. And I'd be curious to see how it reads watching it like. Because we watched it as it came out week by week. So we watched it over the course of 5 weeks.
Like a binge.
Yeah, I'm curious how it reads like over the course of a couple days. Also, I'm curious to rewatch it now that I know how it ends and see like what I can find.
The breadcrumbs.
And also it's just it's a densely packed show. I want to learn more. So
that's The Idol.
Yeah.
Those are our thoughts and theories. This is Second Breakfast with Cam and Maggie. We are on YouTube. We are on Patreon with bonus episodes and a whole back catalog of bonus episodes. We're on Instagram at Second Breakfast Pod. And we will be back on Friday with a brand new episode.
Let us know what you thought of this show. We'd love to hear it.